All right, I'm going to call this Assembly Committee on Housing and Homelessness to order. We are noticed today, Wednesday, January 18th, from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. in the Assembly Chambers. Let's go ahead and start with introductions. I just want to note for the record that Vice Chair Constant, Assembly Member Quinn Davidson, and Assembly Member Solt are excused from today's meeting. So let's go ahead and start with introductions, starting over here on this side.
Peters. Daniel Mullen.
Kevin Cross. Felix Rivera.
Suzanne France.
All right. Then that takes us to initial audience participation. So we have one individual who signed up, Mr. Oliva. Let me just give me a second to turn this on.
Sorry, Felix, it's Mr. Oliva.
My apologies.
That's all right.
Okay.
That's on the record, an apology. That's a little hard.
Well,
Okay, Ron Oliva, I'm here. Hopefully you got your handouts. I own Grub State Auction. You're opening up a navigation center, and I want you to take note of a lawsuit that in Phoenix wasn't dismissed by the judge. A parallel lawsuit is going to be filed on the navigation center and the Brother Francis shelter as a low barrier emergency shelter. My property, there's no sale. It's inverse condemnation. If you pulled anyone and said, do you want a homeless shelter and a navigation center next to your business and home, the answer would be no. You destroyed it. The impact that you have now with these changes, there's no way of minimizing it. You have no plan. And putting that there with no crosswalks on a truck route, Alaska Truckers Association is going to oppose it. But the damage you've done to myself, my property, my family, it's unconscionable, but definitely painful. I'm near bankruptcy because if you go to the next article with the tree case, you can see that the tree was dead on my driveway easement, but in the lawsuit from the property owner, they were awarded almost $200,000, but it was the legal fees of $6.50 an hour. I appealed that those were not normal to defend two dead trees, a beetle-killed spruce and a mayday, and you can see them in the photograph. And the sadness is, the last windstorm, a tree from that property fell onto mine, causing harm and safety concerns. But the attorneys for $6.50 an hour thought that was reasonable. I spent 5 hours. They spent 210. That's 5 whole weeks justifying $6.50 an hour. The judge awarded them another $87,000. The total I owe the attorneys and 2 dead trees is $400,000. All caused by an article that was false, that I'm a wealthy businessman, a real estate tycoon, former politician, and chemical terrorist who poisoned the homeless encampment. Absolutely false. I'm certified as a wastewater treatment plant operator to disinfect. It was a disinfectant, not a pesticide. And the long story of that is I got convicted. So, with that, the impact's already being felt, $60,000. And if someone asks me a question, I'll explain it.
Thank you, Mr. Oliva. Your time is up, and I don't see anyone with questions. Thank you. I forgot to check. Did we have anyone on the phone? Something myself. Thanks. All right. So that concludes our initial audience participation. Mr. Oliva, you are interrupting the meeting. Thank you.
You're morally bankrupt, Felix. It's terrible what you did to me.
Mr. Oliva, you're interrupting the meeting. We gotta move.
You'll see the lawsuit on Monday.
Okay. So we have a very long agenda today. As you can see, most of the topics fall under the emergency shelter plan and demobilization of the plan, which is currently for April. but really beginning in a couple of weeks, as we'll hear about soon. We also have a lot of forward-looking work on the lists, and as I've repeated again and again at this committee, I don't want us to be in constant emergency mode and never get to any of the other work done on long-term solutions. So to make sure that we are able to do both, focus on the emergency in front of us and focus on the long-term solutions, you'll notice a clerk's note at the top of the agenda that there's a special committee meeting planned for next Wednesday, same time as this committee, but at City Hall, room 155 on the first floor. And that is to discuss any topics that we don't conclude today, which I imagine there will probably be a few. After discussion with Assembly leadership, you'll likely see this same trend continue with 2 meetings a month for this committee in February, March, and April as we get through what I hope is a successful demobilization of the emergency shelter plan. The regular monthly committee meeting held on the 3rd Wednesday of the month will be feature-focused and long-term solutions, which is housing. A subcommittee that will be scheduled for the 2nd Wednesday of the month. Notices to come out soon. Same time as this meeting, but at City Hall, room 155, will focus entirely on the emergency shelter plan and demobilization. I know that we don't need yet another meeting in our calendar, but I believe this is the best way for us to get the work done. With that, let's go ahead and move on to our unfinished business, which is primarily demobilization and the emergency shelter plan. We have a long list of items, starting with general updates on the emergency shelter plan implementation. All of these items are really meant to help members get a broad picture of understanding of the issues and timetable we are facing and some of the possible solutions that could be implemented by April. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and move on to general updates. So does the administration have any general updates to share on implementation of the emergency shelter plan?
Thank you so much, through the chair. Just general updates. Henning is running operations at the Sullivan, and they have named 2 new shelter managers. Austin Mock is taking general manager of the shelter, and then June Molify, hopefully I said his last name right, he will be doing the evening shelter management. They've also brought on full-time compliance officer Matt Philpott, and then they also added a community liaison. So if anyone wants to reach out, see, have a tour, have questions. His name is John Paratrovich, and he's been very helpful in working with the community as well.
Thank you. Did you have any other updates, or is that it?
That's all I have for you today.
Great, thank you. Okay, thanks for speaking to the change in the management. That was one of my questions. Out of curiosity, and members can feel free to get in the queue and just have some questions to prime the pump. Has this change in management led to any changes in operations at the Sullivan?
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera, yes, there has been some changes. There is new safety training that all the staff are going through. There's also a higher level of cleanliness. There's more safety patrols. They're going through cleaning up the floor, making sure people are getting in touch with housing and peer support. So there is an added level, and I think you'll start to see that here soon. The positive change with that.
Thanks. When did Austin and June, when did they get on board?
Through the chair. So they have been staffers of Henning Inc., but they did come on board, I believe, the 4th of December, the 4th of January. Yes. The 4th of January.
Okay, so
That's when the transition was, but they are Henning employees, and they've been with the company since conception.
Got it. Okay, so recent. Thank you. I want to note for the record that we have been joined by Mr. Perez Rubio on the phone. So that was early January, so a couple weeks ago. So I have heard of some safety concerns, and I'm glad to hear about this new safety training. Can you, or if there's a representative from Henning in the room, can someone please speak to that?
Through the chair, I'm gonna have Matthew come up.
Great.
My name is Matthew Philpott. I'm the compliance officer for Henning. I just started about 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, I don't know how to address you guys, but it's my honor to be here to explain what we're trying to do. Basically, obviously, we read the contract. The first goal is to meet our contractual obligations, as well as at the same time to look out for the cleanliness and safety of the residents, but also that all the people that are affected by this as well. So, excuse me, I'm nervous. So, that includes the neighborhood. It includes the people that are across the street from the shelter. So what we've done is we implemented increased safety patrols on the outside. As far as safety going, we're not going more hands-on, we're actually going more hands-off. So we're teaching our people how to use verbal judo, not actual physical judo, to de-escalate situations, increase presence, instead of exacerbating the situation by increased officer presence, making people more reactive, maybe sometimes peeling off or tapping out. As far as cleanliness goes, we have more people actually on the floor monitoring that as opposed to being reactive. We're being more proactive, which means myself, John Branovich, we're going around and constantly assessing, reassessing, reevaluating, and changing. Changes happen every single day, and they'll continue to happen.
Great, thank you so much. Actually, I'm going to have a couple more questions for you. I really appreciate someone from Henning coming up to speak. I think we haven't had that before, so I do have a couple more questions. But before, I just want to note for the record that we've been joined by Mr. Sweet. Before I ask questions, though, do any other members want to get into again? Go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate the update as well. Are you coordinating your efforts with some of your neighbors? I know that we've received several emails from Jeff, the owner of Kendall next door. They've reported hundreds of thousands of damages a year and had expressed some frustration with the lack of coordination for security. Are you reaching out to neighbors such a way so you guys can combine efforts?
Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir. Actually, I've done gone around the neighborhood, knocking on some doors. Unfortunately, we haven't actually had to speak to too many people or too many businesses. I wasn't made aware of some complaints that were called into APD. Wanted to address those immediately, which were roads and also people in front of houses. Children not being able to go out from their houses and play basketball or play sports or play outdoor activities. So those are the first things that we wanted to do. So as far as speaking to businesses that were negatively impacted, no, I wasn't aware of that, gentleman. So,
Yeah, if I may follow up. Yeah, Jeff, we can make sure you have his contact information. He's reported to the assembly through communications that individuals that for whatever reason can't get into the shelter will wander next door and break into the vehicles and sleep in his sleeping vehicles within their lot. So look at a way we can mitigate that because they've had to purchase several people's vehicles. You know, when they can't get into shelter, they go in, they break in, they sleep, they defecate inside vehicles, and then they end up having to buy those vehicles for people that are there for repairs. So I know that's a big concern of his, so I really appreciate the update. Maybe we can combine some of our efforts to assist local businesses. Thank you.
yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Philpott, for being here. I appreciate that you spoke to training and efforts to de-escalate. And I just want to be clear that we have heard some very concerning reports about situations within the Sullivan Arena, and I have heard, for example, that staff has been using restraints on clients, and I don't have any of the details. Again, those are reports that have reached the assembly, and I have a number of concerns about that, and I guess, is that happening? Are the techniques for de-escalation addressing whatever situations may be leading to that kind of result, or use, if that's the case, of restraints? And if that is going on, how are issues concerning civil liberties being considered? Thank you, Mr. Chair. if you could address any of those, that would be great.
I'd like to address all of them. The first one, as far as restraints, no, we will not be using restraints at all. That's something that they're not only are not trained on, but it's just something that we don't want to go in the direction of. We're not law enforcement. We're not trying to detain people. If somebody wants to leave, we're allowed to leave. If they want to be there, we would like them there. They did in the past have a chair that if someone was drunk, they would sit them in and they would buckle them in. As far as I know, that was the only thing that was on site that would be considered restrained. That is no longer being used. Now they have a bed. So while they're waiting for ASP to come and transport them, they're put on with a gurney. So there is a seatbelt that kind of pulls them. That's the only restraint that would be there. As far as civil liberties, that's why they brought me on, to make sure that not only that are we in compliance, but we're also respecting the people themselves, every single amendment, their Fourth Amendment as well, the First Amendment, that they're treated like human beings. So, like I said before, the people inside and the people outside. So just to make sure that this is not going to be fixed overnight, and it's going to take your guys' help as well. We don't have all the answers. So, but no, we're not doing that. We have no plans to do that. The plan is actually to get away from that, get away from anybody thinking that we have security on site. We don't have security. We have safety. And safety is in charge of calling medical, providing limited first aid, everything that's operated within our scope. We don't step outside that. We want to comply. That also means that we need to talk to people daily. And if somebody is extremely inebriated and we're not able to provide care for them, whether that be because of a medical condition or because they could be possibly a danger to themselves, we call the appropriate authorities, whether that be EPD, EMS, AFD, or ASP.
Thank you. Quick follow-up?
Sure.
And it's full agenda. And don't need to address this now, but if you could be specific, you mentioned help from the assembly in ways that we can help, because we only have the information we receive. And so anything you can provide would be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, if you have anything specific you want to respond to now, but otherwise.
If we could have a meeting sometime, myself and Mr. Pratovich would love to sit down with you guys. I've heard some of your ideas, all of them, and I think they're wonderful. And I think together, if 10 minds, 20 minds are better than one, right? So that's basically what I know. Thank you.
Thanks. So I put myself next in the queue. So a couple items that I have. First is, can you speak to your staffing ratio at the Sullivan?
Approximately 1 to 14.5.
1 to 14.5.
So we're under the 1 to 30 ratio.
Okay. And is that a staffing ratio that you're able to maintain 24/7?
It goes down at night to about 1 to 27, so it's going from 1 to 30. At night it goes to 1 to 50. We found that having more people there, if you, for example, security response to one incident, that actually takes that person off. They're engaged, so they're no longer counted, in my opinion, as a ratio. They're engaged in a lot more of remedying the situation. So what we want to do, we kind of staffed up a little easier. And that takes stress off of our staff as well, so their bedside manner doesn't sacrifice for as well. But what we're trying to do is treat it like a hotel, like customer service. From the entry, the first receptionist visit goes to the front door. If we have one person there, they're overwhelmed. If we have 3 safety officers there, they're not. So it makes their job easier, and that translates off to the guests, off to the residents, and the service that we provide.
Great. And then I guess the other question I had is, again, we get a lot of reports about things going on at the Sullivan, and unfortunately, it has been historically a little bit of a black hole of information. So we just get reports, right? And then we have to come and ask. So I think having a little bit of better communication would be wonderful, and I really appreciate you all being here. So the report that I had received was regarding hygiene items and the fact that some clients staying at the Sullivan started GoFundMe campaigns to fund basic items like hygiene. So can you speak to some of those basic items that you are providing at the Sullivan for folks staying?
Right now, I'm striking out. I know that we're providing socks, shoes, anything that's donated, we make sure this is distributed immediately, including toothpaste, toothbrushes. So as soon as it gets in, we find out who needs it, who wants it. But I don't know our stock, I can't tell you.
Thanks. And are most of your items volunteer-driven, or are you providing those items for the clients?
Some of them we are providing, and some of them are donated. We have a lot of people that want to be involved, and we welcome it.
And how do you communicate when some of those basic items, like hygiene items, that you are running low and you need help from the community to provide those items? How do you communicate that?
We have certain people within our organization who have connections with other organizations who would simply request, say, we're running low on blankets. Like I said before, we were reacting in the past where organizations were being proactive. Whether that be tubs, blankets, hygiene items, we're just reaching out and saying, hey, does anybody have anything extra? We could really use it.
Okay, great, wonderful. I'm happy to hear about that increased level of communication and collaboration happening. So speaking of collaboration, does anyone from Henning attend the Emergency Shelter Task Force? Because I know you want to meet with us, which is great, but we as assembly members don't really manage the system itself. That's really either the administration manages the system or the Emergency Shelter Task Force has been really doing a good job of the nuts and bolts of the system. So does anyone from Henning attend those meetings?
Not to my knowledge, but I would love to be there. I'm sure Mr. Pryor would as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I would suggest it. I attend those meetings every now and then, and I think they're a great opportunity for the providers to really work together.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from folks? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So before I move on to the next item, are there any other items under general updates that folks want to bring up that aren't on the agenda already?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry for the delayed question, and actually, this may be for Mr. Philpott, but I was just curious if the staff ratio applies to the warming area as well? Maybe you know the answer, Mr. Chair.
I do not. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, it does. We can make sure that we're compliant there as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay, not seeing anyone else for general updates, and we'll go ahead and move on. So next item rather, is Covenant House as part of the emergency shelter plan. So when the Assembly approved the emergency shelter plan last year, it included shelter for transitional age youth at Covenant House. And I always imagined that that service would be provided for the entire winter, not just through the end of 2022. It didn't get included for whatever reason when we extended contract amendments in December. I urged the administration at that time to get us a contract amendment for Covenant House ASAP. We still haven't seen one, so I'm going to turn first to the administration, and then I understand we have a representative from Covenant House here. Can the administration speak to the plan to get a contract amendment before the body so that we can continue those services at Covenant House?
Through the chair, so we're currently trying to find a funding stream, a solid funding stream. As you know, we are currently using our Anchorage Health Department operating budget in lieu of alcohol tax because that has not been reconciled yet. I've been working with OMB and CFO to see if they will fund CERT, even though the first quarter budget revisions haven't gone through. And so I have a meeting today at 3 p.m. Hopefully, with that clarification, we'll be able to get the Covenant House amendment.
Thanks. Yeah, unfortunately, I imagine that we don't have representatives from OMB or Finance here today. Okay, then I think this is right for follow-up with OMB and Finance. I am unaware of any issues that should hamper usage of 2022 unspent alcohol tax funds for these purposes. And I think there's a timeliness factor here. So perhaps that's something that we will plan on doing, is having OMB and or CFO here to speak to that for this specific item. I want to note for the record that Mr. Presbyria has joined us in person. And have we had anyone else on the phone join us? We've had some beeps, okay. So then I'll go ahead and invite a representative from Covenant House to come up. So can you speak to the services that you're providing, the census that you are serving, and your ability to continue the service without funding?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the Assembly. My name is Allison Kern. I'm the Executive Director. And I would say this has probably been one of the hardest things that Covenant House has done, but the best. So in addition to what we have been doing with all of our emergency shelter, emergency cold weather opened up 25 additional young people staying with us, as well as at the same time, we opened up day services. And so through this process, we have seen 202 individual unduplicated youth come through. And I think the biggest reason is because that was the age expansion to 24. These young people would be at Sullivan if they were not with us. And so when we agreed to do this, it was through the winter, as Chair Rivera said. And so it's a little shocking to us when we realized that the contract ended at 12/31. Covenant House, of course, has not discontinued that service. Last night we had 28 young people in emergency services. I just left the place and we had about 71 young people in day services. So these are some reasons why there is great value to it, because we're connecting everyone to navigators. And I'm also very happy to say that we opened Covey Lofts, and we have 3 young people a day exiting homelessness. So it is all a part of the puzzle, and it's a critical piece, and we are prepared to do it.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions regarding Covenant House? All right, I'm not seeing any. Then, yeah, so certainly this is something that we will follow up with OMB on. It sounds like it's really in their hands to figure out how we can go through some bureaucratic hoops to make sure that the funds are there for this. And for my part, this is certainly a priority to make sure that we are providing this service for our transitional age youth. Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, we already know that the Sullivan is either at or already near its new capacity, right? So we don't need to keep putting more pressure on the Sullivan. So thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cross.
What about children that are too young to take advantage of yours? What are you working primarily with OCS and have? I know you can't speak specifically to the numbers, but can you give us any kind of impression of that?
Yeah, so we, whenever we started this process to basically be able to go up to age 24 at the Youth Engagement Center, our main campus, we took the minors off the footprint. So we have a house for the minors, and we have the ability to overflow up to 8. And we've been running about 95% capacity with that. So there is no minor that we're not going to be able to take care of that comes to us.
Okay, you spoke to that when you increased to 24-year-olds, you've seen a 200+ increase, but that was because of expansion. And I appreciate that. That's an important fact that we're separating the minors. And you're operating about 95%. Does that population seem to be increasing, decreasing, staying pretty stable just because you're at 95%?
Yeah.
75% would just be what we consider turnover, which is room comes available, it's only been long enough to clean up.
We've been working with OCS and the minors for 25 years. I mean, it's a love, I'll say online, a love relationship with making sure that young people are in a safe, stable place. So I'm confident that we can handle the minors that are in need. And if we were, that's always been a priority of Covenant House. And so if we had seen some sudden spike or reason, then we would make sure that we found additional space for minors. But what we really saw was the gap that was existing between 21 and 24. And so that's why whenever we have 205 unduplicated, individual, unique, we've never seen them in our Covenant House system before. So these are new people that we were able to help direct and divert from possibly going into adult shelter services.
Thanks. And could you just remind me, what's your average nightly census?
So at the Youth Engagement Center, it's 39, and it's a 40-bed shelter. And then we have the 25 over. Between all of our programs and rapid rehousing, we have about 243 a night.
Yeah, but specifically for the emergency shelter.
Emergency shelter is running 39. We've been definitely using the emergency overflow just to manage. We haven't ever turned anyone away.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see any other questions. Thank you so much. All right, next item is food policy implementation. So in December, the Assembly passed a food policy for emergency shelter and asked the administration to present to us at today's meeting about the implementation of the food policy and any funding required for the first, through the end of emergency shelter, which is planned for April right now, to continue that food policy. So can the administration please speak to that?
Yes, through the chair. So currently at the Aviator, we are serving 2 meals, breakfast and dinner, and then there's currently a food pantry and kitchen on site for lunch. Alex Hotel is serving 2 meals as well, breakfast and dinner, and then they have snacks and fresh produce delivered available for lunch. And then Sullivan is currently serving 3 square meals a day.
And thank you. And so in the administration's perspective, what you just reported on at the Alex Aviator and Sullivan, do you feel like that complies with the Assembly's policy?
Through the chair, we were doing 3 meals at the Aviator, and there was a lot of food waste. Same with the Alex. The Sullivan is the only one currently that is serving 3 meals that we're not seeing a lot of waste. So in lieu of lunch at Alex and Aviator, they have a food pantry on site at Aviator that people can utilize. And then also there is deliveries of fresh produce to the Alex at lunchtime. A lot of people who are staying at the Alex, the non-congregate shelter, actually leave during the day. So the meal being delivered is wasted. And so what they do is they just drop off snacks and produce. And we're seeing success with that.
Okay, thank you. So as far as you understand, are there any clients being served at the Alex or Aviator who are requesting lunch and are unable to get it?
Through the chair, absolutely not. If someone even reaches out to Henning and says, hey, I'm looking for a meal, Henning will fully comply to get the meal. There is nobody going hungry at any of the congregate or non-congregate locations right now.
Okay. Great. I think that was the intent of the policy, not necessarily to create food waste, but to make sure that if someone wanted those 3 meals, that those meals would be provided. And it sounds to me like if anyone wants the 3 meals, that they are provided. So I guess that gets to my next question. Is it your understanding that there will be any additional funding required to continue that?
Through the chair, we have not deemed an increase of funding for food at this time, so we won't be asking for an appropriation.
Okay. Any other questions on this topic? All right, thank you. So next is the Sullivan capacity request from the administration. So also in December, when the Assembly passed the contract amendment to extend utilization of the Sullivan Arena as an emergency shelter through January 27th, we also included a requirement that the administration present to us at today's meeting about any future capacity requests it would make at the Sullivan. So is the administration ready to speak to that today?
Yes, sir, through the chair. So we are currently seeing increased capacity at the Sullivan Arena, staying around that 360 range that we had requested in December. And so it's the administration's standpoint that we would continue on with that 360 number.
Thank you. So the administration then will be bringing forward a resolution to request 360 for how long?
Through the chair, ultimately, I think the request will be through April, just because we see the current need at 360, and with the demob of the aviator coming online, unless we get a large number of housing units coming on, we're going to continue to see these numbers.
Has the administration taken into account, and we're going to get to this later on in our agenda, but any of the other work that's being done to bring on additional housing units that might defray some of the need at the Sullivan? Has the administration taken that into account when considering the 360 number?
Through the chair, so right now with the demob of the aviator, it's my understanding that when we do get the Barrett in online, a lot of the clientele that we're currently seeing at the aviator will have the opportunity to move into housing, but the need will still be around 360 in low barrier shelter, because currently, I believe, let me get you a number, we have 125 guests currently still at the aviator that will need housing before April, and the Barrett is bringing on 96 units, and I don't know if they're double occupancy or not, but that need will be met, but it won't affect the Sullivan in a huge number. We won't go back to 200, or that at least won't be my request.
Thank you. So then, I guess my last, actually a couple more questions, and then other folks, if we want to get in the queue on this one. Will the administration be bringing forward a resolution at the January 24th meeting then, I assume?
Through the chair, if you would like me to bring forward a resolution, I can lay one on the table. It won't make the addendum today, unfortunately.
Yeah, no problem. I think speaking for myself, other members may have other opinions, but I think I'll lay it on the table one for this. I think meets the criteria, because otherwise on January 27th, I think we revert back to the 150 plus 50. So I think that would be appropriate. And then the second question is, can you just speak to a little bit of the census? Because I think looking at the dashboard that the health department keeps, I think it's a little difficult to track how many folks are staying. So could you speak to the census like the last week or so at Sullivan?
Yeah, through the chair. So we've been seeing an average of 350 people a night. All beds are currently accounted for, but as we spoke at the last Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting, people will say that they're coming back, or they will check in for the night, and then they will leave. And then they're not checked out until the following day. So you're not going to see that 360 unless every person who has a bed is coming back for the night. And so we've been maintaining the 350 number ever since we did increase capacity back in December. And just for clarification, the rate on the table that you want brought forward, do you want us to extend through April, or do you want us to stay on that 30-day?
I would suggest that the administration bring forward whatever it would like,
Okay.
and then the body will deliberate from there.
Okay.
So that is the beds. What about the warming area? How many people on average are staying there?
So I would say on average, we're looking between 50 and 70 people. I can't tell you if those are deduplicated numbers or if those are people accessing the warming area multiple times through the night. We currently haven't been seeing a huge number of people in the warming area that want a bed. They're just coming in for snacks and warm drinks and to get warm, but they're exiting the warming area as well.
Okay, thanks. I'll go ahead and open up to any other members. Yeah, Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for the update. I did want to encourage you to try to make the addendum deadline. It's new tomorrow. I know you have lots on your plate, but I'm assuming that as far as what will be laid on the table, it won't be anything necessarily unique to what has been brought forward to the body before. So if that's a possibility, I would appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Cross.
Yeah, just a couple of things to follow up here. Now, the Barrett Inn, that's important to remember, that's housing, that's not shelter, so to speak, and it's also, they won't be, as far as double occupancy, that won't be, those rooms are set up specifically, from what I understood, as families, maybe families with adult children, but as far as, merging two different families or doing double occupancy, it really just depends on And I don't know when that's anticipated, but when we toured that facility, I think 2 months ago, it still needed a kitchen remodel, needed everything, because although this was a hotel and this is moving to housing, then you understand housing needs a kitchenette, needs somewhere to prepare food and cook, and it was mostly set up like a hotel with a restaurant, and it still needs some modifications. And I would anticipate those generally take longer than anticipated, so I'm also concerned with when Barrett's going to be able to come on the record. Maybe someone can speak to that. But when it comes up on operation, I know that they were going to fill it in phases, but also being able to provide services for the individuals who live there as Aviator comes offline. So we're going to be in a very interesting transition here where it's going to be real tight, and we're probably going to lose beds before we gain them. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, great point, Mr. Cross. I think part of today's meeting is for us to really get a picture of what we're facing in the short term and then facing through April. And so I think you'll hear a little bit of that when we get to the Aviator and then when we get to the other hotel conversions. So that hopefully the public and the members can leave today with a good an idea of where the holes are at, what are we going to be facing, and what we need to do to deal with this. And I think, as I've alluded to, I think there's going to be a lot of work that we're going to need to do in the next weeks and months with regard to the emergency shelter demobilization.
Mr. Chair, can I-
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I think I want to circle back to the warming area and how that factors into capacity. So you said there's maybe 50 to 70 people utilizing the warming area. Are you including that when you talk about the 360 capacity number?
Through the chair, Mr. Wellen, no, I'm not. So I do want to clarify, you're not having 70 people currently in a warming area just sitting around. It's transitional, and so people are coming in and leaving, coming in. So you might have 5 or 10 people in, and then 5 might leave, and then 20 more might come in. So it's not a bulk of 70 people currently. Now with the increased capacity, we're seeing more foot traffic. It's not so stagnant.
How many people at like a given time?
So yesterday when I visited, there were 15 people in the warming area.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we've had some conversation about whether or not the warming area has been used to effectively increase capacity, maybe without assembly approval. And I don't know. I'm curious how the members feel about that. The fact that it's inside the Sullivan, it's maybe a wing and kind of some little thing, but I'm also just kind of focused on the impacts on the neighborhood. And when we set a number for capacity, when we vote to approve, if we have a late on the table item come forward, how are we factoring the warming area in with the rest of the capacity?
Thanks. I can certainly speak to my thoughts, and I think probably other members have other thoughts, but for my part, whenever we set a limit at the Sullivan, it is the Sullivan Arena, right? It isn't this level of the Sullivan, it's the entire building. If the administration wants to segregate those numbers and say 360 for beds plus however many much for warming area, then I would suggest the administration bring that forward in such a fashion. Otherwise, in my mind, 360 is 360 total.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cross.
Yeah, and I guess that's where we need specifics, because I would disagree. I think that like a hotel or a motel, you have bed count, but then you have the lobby where people come in and check in, and you may have restrictions on, hey, they're in here, and particularly in light of when the warming area started, when it was 25 below up. They're not getting beds, they're not getting things, they're sitting here. And maybe you use a warming, you can use a warming area like a transition, which is, hey, we're waiting to assign you a bed. We know this individual will be leaving, and so, because as much as you may not like the warming area as capacity of Sullivan Arena, then what happens? You either go outside and freeze, or they're going to go, like you just heard from Jeff Tate or Jeff with Kendall, they leave and they go break into vehicles or they go become, listen, if you're cold and you need heat, if Sullivan Marina is going to let me in, I will find a place to keep warm. And so giving some malleability to the management to say that what we're doing is in the best interest of human safety and compassion, I think you got to allow that. To say that, no, you can't come in right now because we know some beds are coming up, but we're at 360, go stand outside. I think there needs to be some, rather than say, well, we're the assembly, we said you couldn't do that. I think the purpose of this is compassion. I think the purpose is helping people in need, and allowing some malleability of that with the management, I think is valuable.
Thank you. I think in response to that, I would say that the best way that we can help people in need is making sure that we have the appropriate services there. And so if we have if we know that there's going to be more than 360 people at the Sullivan, then we can plan for the appropriate services there. But if we say 360, then that's what we plan for. So I think that I think there is a middle ground where we can give the flexibility, but we also provide the resources so that people can actually get the services that they need. Okay, any other discussion on this topic? Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Franks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I have a question. Maybe it's to Mr. Rowland. And I'm curious if you have heard feedback as to if or how those folks who are in the warming area may be part of the disruption some of folks in the surrounding neighborhood have been experiencing. Maybe it doesn't factor in at all. I heard that staffing-wise, the ratio applies to the warming area, but I'm just curious if that has factored into your knowledge, that piece.
I regularly hear various concerns. I haven't seen any of them tied directly to the warming area. My own thought is that, I wonder, I have a question. Has the administration, so as originally conceived, the warming area was a heated tent, and obviously that was costly and maybe not the most effective setup. But has the administration looked at potentially other opportunities for warming areas that are not at the Sullivan?
Through the chair, we did hear of a nonprofit that was interested in opening a warming area, but it's actually just up EAC to the right, so the residents would still be in the neighborhood in Fairview, and so I'm setting up a meeting with them to discuss to see if they'd be open to having a warming area. The issue is that we have a homeless shelter at Sullivan Arena, and so people think that when they show up, they're going to get a service, and then it's our duty to say, hey, it's snowing outside, it's negative temperatures, like we need to get you inside. And so to Mr. Cross's point and to your point, if we don't allow people to come in and get warm in the warming area, they're more likely to stay in the neighborhood and to congregate around the Sullivan Arena. And so we're opening a service to de-escalate issues in the neighborhood, if that makes sense. If they're not allowed in the Sullivan, then they're going to be in the neighborhood. And it's our hopes, and obviously your hope as well, to keep people from congregating in the neighborhoods and causing trouble there. And so when we allow them into the warming facility, we offer them food and they're meeting with staff. And so it's my understanding that the more that we let them into the warming area, the less neighborhood disruption they're causing.
Thank you. Mr. Cross?
Do you use the warming area as an opportunity to direct them to other services if necessary? Is there somebody there who says, oh, listen, I understand, but let's say that you're a veteran, so you know what, we actually have some services, and let's see if we can help you by providing, I don't know, whatever transportation we can to make sure, for lack of a better term, almost like a navigation point for individuals. Is that helping pre-screen?
Yeah, through the chair, Mr. Cross, we've actually been working with the coalition and their outreach team. Their outreach team comes out and meets with people in the warming area, gets them on the CE list, asks them about their life story and if they're qualified for other services around town. Henning is also in the warming area, offering non-congregate locations if the rooms are made available. So it's always ever changing, it's always rapid. And so we're trying to connect people in the warming area with services as best we can. But right now, the resources are less than the need.
Well,
Thank-
if I may follow up.
Sure.
Chair, I think that points to the importance of these warming areas, because then what happens, you have the Sullivan Arena, which is the housing for checking in, and then you have an area where they're coming in, and maybe it's, you know what, this is, I appreciate you, and I, you know, you're coming to it, but we can redirect that. Where does that individual wait until they're either being, till they can get transportation to another service, right? Until they're being more appropriately served. And so I think this speaks to whether, this puts into perspective a different view on what the warming area has the potential to become might be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm a little bit torn on your response. I will be transparent just because I do think it's positive to have folks be able to access the services that they need and to come in from the cold. And I think there's some truth in your statement about potentially that does bring people in from the neighborhood or in from having to, you know, try to pursue other opportunities to be warm that maybe are more problematic. I do think that there's a faulty dilemma here that it all has to be in Sullivan. And in one neighborhood, and even the idea of having another warming area, a separate warming area in Fairview. There's some Fairviews to go to. And I think we need to think a little bit broader and a little bit more outside the box. Warming areas are great, why do they all have to be in Fairview?
Through the chair,
Yeah, let's
so
follow up.
Mr. Baldwin, I would love to take them out of Fairview and I would love to put them on Tudor and Elmore. Unfortunately, we couldn't come to an agreement on the navigation center. I hope that is not lost. But I would love to have a navigation center where people could be sheltered and also be navigated that's not in Fairview. You know, we asked for an increase at BFS. They said that they would not go up. The Alex Hotel is built 100 rooms, so there's no more space. And quite honestly, there's no more funding. And in the long term, yes, the Sullivan Arena, I don't love the Sullivan Arena, but it's what the city is working with within our financial bounds. And ultimately, I think the goal is to get a navigation center and shelter to take people out of Fairview and just spread the wealth.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go to Ms. LaFrance, then I want us to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear for the record that the reason why the Navigation Center is not moving forward and is stopped is because the law concerning procurement was not followed, and the Assembly was forced to take that action. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move us on to Fairview Downtown Mitigation. So this issue is bouncing between the Public Safety Committee and this committee. Last we heard at Public Safety Committee was that the previous plan to use APD had not been implemented. We did get an email last Friday which detailed the administration's plan, so can someone speak to that?
Through the chair, yes, so I do have some good news on this. Parks and Rec has been focusing their cleanup efforts around the Sullivan Arena and Chester Creek area. They've hired 2 additional Healthy Spaces workers that started on Monday. And then there are 4 that have currently been hired that have gone through the interview process and hopefully will be starting work the following Monday, so next Monday. And they're hoping to staff up to 11 additional people outside of their regular Healthy Spaces. So that accounts for roughly 150K of the 400K. And then APD has also started community patrols around the Fairview neighborhood. And so we met with Chief Curl. Let me see if I can get you an answer on that. I believe you guys were on that email chain. But for the public record, so they are going to be increasing foot patrols and also car patrols in the area. And they will be doing mornings 9 a.m. to 1300 hours, afternoons 1700 to 2100 hours, and evenings 2200 to 2 a.m. And they're gonna be focusing on equipment violations, pedestrian violations, camping violations, speed enforcement and parking enforcement, and illegal camps. So if you have any questions on that, I can answer them.
Great, thank you. You want to know for the record that we've been joined by Ms. Glenn Davidson on the phone. Any questions on this topic? Okay. I don't have any. Appreciate the update and for the implementation here. I think what I'm going to do is I will leave this as an agenda topic for February, just in case it is something that we need to discuss, but otherwise I'll plan on taking it off the agenda after February, because I will consider it, the implementation at least, done. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the administration plan for demobilization. So from here, we're going to be focusing on demobilization and some of the possible avenues that will assist us in demobilization. I wanted to start and see if the administration wanted to speak to their thoughts on demobilization and if there's any plan in place or in development.
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera, I currently don't have any plans. I do know that we have started discussions on demo plans, but I don't have anything to share currently, aside from the aviator is on track for demobilization.
Yeah, thanks. We'll get to the aviator in a second. So I guess a couple questions that I have. One, is there a date certain that the administration plans on presenting or speaking to demobilization with the Assembly?
Through the chair, we'd be happy to have a work session on that. I do not have a date specific for you at this time.
Okay, and then how is the administration working with the Emergency Shelter Task Force on demobilization?
Through the chair, Mr. Rivera, we currently attend all the meetings that the coalition has out for the weekly meetings, and so we'll be working with them concurrently for demobilization.
Thanks. And then I think for the benefit of the body and the public, just have a couple specific ideas, or not really ideas, but questions, I guess, regarding demobilizations on specific projects. So will the administration be considering, as part of its demobilization plan, the Tudor and Elmore Navigation Center?
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera, I don't know of any current plans with the Tudor Elmore or any movement on that, so I couldn't say if it was going to be in the demo or not. If that becomes available and we move forward with that project, absolutely.
Thank you. And then has the administration considered any reuse of the Centennial Park campground as part of the demobilization plan?
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera, I haven't had any discussions on Centennial Campground, but I'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you. I guess just a sort of a general question, and then if other folks want to get in the queue, please let me know. So when we talk about demobilization, what is the deadline for demobilization? And I'm speaking of this in two terms. One, in terms of when are the facilities going to be closed, and then two, when is the deadline for any new intakes to the facilities?
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera, I don't have a deadline for you on the Sullivan. It's one, heavily dependent on funding, and two, I think it's heavily dependent on the new housing units that are coming online. If we could get the Golden Lion up as housing, the Barrett, the undisclosed location, and there is a fourth one that we're hearing some chatter on. I think that, the sooner we can get people out of low barrier shelter and into housing, the better.
Thank you. So we do have the contract amendments in place. So are you suggesting that the administration may further extend those contract amendments if we don't have things in place for demobilization?
Through the chair, Mr. Rivera, it is heavily dependent on finances, as you know, but ultimately it's our our goal is to get people into housing, and so I don't have a demo pick for you today, and unfortunately I won't be able to speak on where the population is going at this time.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions on the administration's plan? And we have some specific pieces that we'll talk about, but any other general questions? Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cross.
Well, less of a question, more of a statement, I guess. We have our facility contracts of various buildings here, but when those expire, if we haven't come up with other housing units, I don't know what other options they have other than extend. I mean, we either, if we don't get more housing units on, as some of these come up, as the aviator decommissions, we know they've been dying to develop that building for some time, right? And they want to convert that back into a hotel. We approved the liquor license for when they do right here on the assembly, so we know that they're putting things in line to get that up and running as a hotel. So I would imagine the only option is if we don't get these other housing units up, then we have to ask for an extension. They would have to, in hopes that the property owners would, particularly aviator, would be open to that. I don't see that you have another option unless you find other buildings to offset what ends up being converted back into hotels.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Yeah, I think that's the whole point of our discussion here is to get a better sense of the scope and then talk about the solutions at play. So before we move on in our agenda, I guess I want to provide an opportunity, since the administration got to speak to their work on demobilization. Does someone from the Emergency Shelter Task Force want to speak to their work on demobilization?
Taria Ware, Director of Systems and Policy with the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness. I have a new title, so I don't know it. Please excuse me if I think about it, and that's not the title. So currently, the Emergency Shelter Task Force is set to meet on January 23rd, in which Alexis has been attending those meetings. We do have several subgroups that will be continuing to meet, and then we do plan to offer some kind of recommendation, if possible. But we're really looking forward to the administration to come up with a plan, and if they need our help, or if they want any technical assistance, then we would be there either as ACH or the Emergency Shelter Task Force. Currently, they are in the capacity planning subgroup, which talks about overall capacity as a system, not only right now, but for future use, because we are future planning.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So any questions before we move on to the aviator discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Franks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really just a general comment, just to share my perspective with the administration and other members of the body and community members. And that is, since we started having conversations going back to the Alaska Club and the Golden Lion, it's my own position that I really don't want the municipality to get into the business of being a provider of emergency shelter. That said, I recognize we have a responsibility for public safety. We have a responsibility to ensure that there is capacity. It is my own preference that this is more of a supporting role. It's a facilitating role. It's a role with some funding through the alcohol tax. And going back to those conversations, as it was my preference then, it remains my preference to assist with capital acquisitions, to convey to either the trust or to nonprofits, so that the municipality isn't actually the one running a navigation center, for example, or the situation we are in. And I wanted to put that out there for consideration as the administration puts its plan together, and also because I understand there are other opportunities within the community for possible purchase of property that might be a way to help address the needs of not just emergency shelter, but housing in our community, and that perhaps the municipality might be able to have a facilitating role as a partner in such an acquisition. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. I'm not seeing anything else, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the aviator and the demobilization plan for that specifically. So can the administration give us the schedule for the taper demo of the aviator? So I think you said 125 at the aviator right now. Can you tell us the dates of when that's going to drop down and the specific numbers there?
Yes, so right now we have 125 clients in 115 rooms at the aviator. Our next goal for demo is the first week of February, and we'll have to get down to 65 rooms. So currently we have 115 rooms, and we'll have to cut that in half in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we're working with the guests at the aviator right now to get them into long-term housing.
And what's the next one after that?
Give me about 5 minutes, I can tell you.
Okay. All right, and then, so, well, I'm going to ask you more questions, so hopefully you can multitask. So, what is the short-term plan? Because I imagine 125 people, 115 rooms, 65 rooms, even if we double up, we're going to have to taper down to some specific number of individuals. So what is the short-term plan then for that delta?
So we're continuing to work with clients at the aviator to get them into housing options. Right now, originally the plan was to coincide the downgrade of the aviator with the turning on of the Barrett, but now that we know that the Barrett is coming online later, we are still going to work with hand in hand with the aviator to ensure that people aren't being kicked out. I would say 99% of the clientele that has left the aviator has left through attrition and not through other means like an 86 or of that. So right now we're working with the aviator and the operator of the aviator to ensure that nobody's being kicked out the aviator.
Okay, thanks. And I assume you don't have the rest of the numbers yet?
I don't, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. So I guess pretty much everything on our agenda has to do with you. So we'll come back to the aviator then once you're able to pull up those numbers. So we'll move forward and then come back to that discussion because I think it's important for us to have the numbers. So then we'll move on to the Golden Lion. Glad to see the mayor's announcement about the Golden Lion and that he has caught up with the assembly on this topic. Last time, remember, we were waiting to get a sense of the scope of needed repairs for an appropriation to fund those repairs. So do we have any updates and when will we see appropriation?
Through the chair, Mr. Rivera, I don't have any massive update for you. I just want, I have a number. I believe the estimate is around $600,000 for repair costs. The administration will be bringing forward an appropriation request. And right now we're looking at a 4 to 6 month lead time. But they're hoping to shorten the window. That's just the rough estimate. But unfortunately, I'm not covering the Golden Lion project as it's still with the building department, so I wouldn't have any deep details for you.
Thanks. So you are unaware then when an appropriation will be prepared or brought to the assembly?
Through the chair, I can meet with Chief of Staff Trombley and get that for you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that would be helpful because I think several members are really interested in seeing that appropriation before us so that the sooner we approve the funds, the sooner we can do the repairs, the sooner we can turn it on as housing. Any other discussion on the Golden Lion? Yeah, Mr. Cross.
Yeah, if I recall from the mayor's report last Tuesday, one of the big enigmas was what it was going to take to get the fire protection system in, and that was an extensive project, one of the largest, probably 1/3 of the funding, and they were waiting for that. And obviously, until the fire protection system's online, they're not going to allow occupancy, and I believe that was part of the bottlenecking, waiting for those bids and waiting for that to come in. It does, fire protection systems are a little more, require a little more engineering and review process than say fixing sheetrock or, self-closing doors, but That was my recollection, so I imagine until they know how much to appropriate for the fire system, and those bids take weeks, if not, depending on the size and scope, because you got hydraulic calculations, everything go into it, so I think, we're probably not gonna see anything at least for a couple of weeks, just from my experience with fire protection contractors and engineering bids. Thank you.
Thank you. Who from the administration could come and speak to us about this project?
Through the chair, Mr. Rivera, I believe Chief of Staff Trombley will be able to assist in that.
Great. I think it would be wonderful to have Mr. Trombley here at a future meeting to speak to this. I think one of the other things that I'd be interested in is, with the 4 to 6 month lead time for the repairs, that means that at the earliest, the facility won't be on until May, which is sort of a little bit later than that looming March 31 deadline. So, when will the administration know how much sooner we'll be able to do those repairs, or how much quicker we'll be able to do the repairs? Because you alluded to possibly doing them quicker.
Through the chair, Mr. Rivera, that was just the answer that I was given on the Gold Line. This isn't a project that I'm currently overseeing or really have my hand in. I could get more up to speed on that, and hopefully I can have an answer to you by next week's Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting, a more drilled down number and time frame, if that helps.
Yeah, that would be helpful if Mr. Trump is able to attend, even if on the phone for the specific time that we're discussing this topic. That would be helpful.
Perfect. I just sent an email to him asking for his presence.
Thanks. Yeah, Mrs. Franks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize if I missed this in the discussion. Are ML&P funds then available or being used for repairs, or is that part of what's being?
Difference of opinion. So I think I don't want to speak for the administration, but I think it's safe to say that the administration doesn't believe that we can use those funds. I have a different opinion. I believe that we can use those funds. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussion on the Golden Line before we move on? Okay, then that takes us to other hotel conversions. So can someone from Rasmussen or the Anchorage Affordable Housing Land Trust speak to the 2 hotel conversions occurring in Spenard and how they will or won't play into demobilization?
Okay, thank you. My name is Vic Palazzi, and I'm chair of the new Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust. We acquired the $11.8 million that the Assembly appropriated to the Rasmussen Foundation. As you know, Rasmussen didn't want to own real estate. The trust was created. And in the period between Thanksgiving and the end of the year, we acquired the funds. We closed on the Barrett Inn. We acquired the LLC interest in the guest house. And we're in the process of getting closing set up for hotel number 3 by the end of the month. We are currently advertising for an operations person, because at the end of the day, we're going to have close to 300 units on 3 parcels. These units are they're not shelter, basically they're housing. And each one of our tenants is going to go through a process where they sign a lease. They're going to have a source of payment for the room, whether it's a voucher, whether it's self-pay, or whether it's some other means. The units that we're dealing with are single rooms, some of which, so that's going to be the category of individual. As the trust, we are not going to provide any services at all. Our responsibility is to own real estate. My background is commercial banker. I was one of the founders of North Rim Bank. I know a lot about real estate. The board that we have knows a lot about real estate. But our primary goal at the end of the day is 5 years, 10 years from now, to turn these buildings over to the new board, to the new people sitting where you're sitting now, in 100% shape, beautiful shape. We also end up with a situation where we have reserves, and we want reserves for the roof repair and all the other issues, because we are the owners of apartment buildings. and that's the way we're going to operate. What we do, we're going to contract out the services, whether it's any for inside or the outside maintenance and that type of thing. And we're moving forward. We are going to have a planning meeting, strategic planning meeting tomorrow at Rasmussen, and pretty much follow it the way we did at North Rim Bank, and that is we're going to do a 5-year plan, and every year that plan gets updated because conditions change, funding sources change, a whole variety of things changes, but it allows us to keep us focused on our mission, and our mission is to house individuals, but those individuals have to have a source of payment, otherwise their business model is not going to work. So that's where we're at now on our 96-unit apartment building, formerly known as the Barrett Inn. We closed. We had that big snow dump. We had a problem with the roof. Ray Cooper was in there cleaning it up, and we're working on it right now. But we're probably 60 days away from actually being able to start going through the lease-up process. Our hotel number 3 that we're planning on closing in the next, before the end of the month, we will have some rooms available, but we have to engage an operator. We have a lot to do. So in the last 60 days, we've really put the organization together, with job descriptions, committee charters, ethics agreements, and all the other issues that you need to do when you put together a nonprofit. So if there are any other questions, I tried to be concise, and I know we're close for time, but I'll be more than happy to answer anything.
Thank you. So I guess just to recap, it sounds like the Barrett, the hotel formerly known as the Barrett, might just barely meet that March 31 deadline. Is that?
Yeah, barely. I mean, if everything goes right, material shows up, the contractors, so we're on contractor time, so how that works. So, yeah, we hope to have it. I mean, our goal is to get these, is to move forward and do whatever we can to get these rooms ready and get them open and get the operations system. We're building this from scratch. There is no organization. Procedures, all the issues that we're talking about, we're starting from zero. And, well, not from zero, I can't say that, but again, we're building a model as this is developing, for sure.
Can you remind me on hotel number 3 how many rooms?
Pardon?
For hotel number 3, how many rooms?
Hotel number 3 is going to be a little less than 50 rooms.
Okay, thanks. And no way that one will be open by March 31, but what's the projection right now?
The projection to get we have work to do on some rooms. I think when we close, once we have to have an operator and get that in place, get a contract in place for an operator. But once we do that, I think we'll slowly open it up. I think we're going to start out with about 4 or 5 rooms because we need it occupied. But I don't know how much work needs to be done on the other rooms before we can start taking individuals in. I'm just not sure on that.
Okay, that would be something I think to have information in the future, because I think part of the reason I'm asking these questions is that we are facing what essentially comes down to numbers problem, right? And any assistance that can be provided to help fix that numbers problem, whether it's after April, before April, we can come up with short-term, midterm plans that maybe help the problem up until other permanent plans are in place. So I think this helps to provide all of that context.
Once we close and take possession of the facility, we're going to do all we can to fill as many rooms as we can, as quickly as we can. So that is our goal too. Our goal is to get people inside rooms where they can take showers and they have a bed and everything that we really want people to have.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any other questions. Mr. France?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A quick question. Thank you so much for the information.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard you say the plan is to turn them over, the properties over, to the municipality? Did I?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you.
Well, when we acquired the funds from the municipality, and the trust actually purchased the 96-unit formerly Barrett Inn. But at the same time, when the 130 unit building, formerly known as the guest house, was formed, there was an LLC that was created to own the facility itself. We acquired the interest in the LLC before the end of the year. And as we move forward, each one of these facilities will have separate LLCs, separate accounting, and all that. So yeah, we're not turning anything over to Muni. We received actually the funds from the Muni 11-8.
Right. Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding correctly and misunderstood that remark. Thank you.
Okay, well, anybody else?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Ross.
No, just I too with the facility, and although I did vote against the appropriation, I really like the way later on I learned how you had formed the LLC with the reserves. It's 20% of it, the proceeds going back to reserve accounts, so we being hit with more appropriations later. So actually, I'm really impressed with what you put together for the Barrett Inn. I toured that facility extensively, and I recall the timelines being, and hopefully we get it sooner, but it was March for partial opening, and that was selected rooms, because remember it doesn't have kitchens, it doesn't have all that, so we need all that infrastructure. And then perhaps May with a more aggressive, but I mean it's going to be brought in phases, little groups. I don't anticipate it'll be at full capacity until midsummer, and that's a reality we're going to have to deal with, just because, listen, our contract labor and everything is behind. And although most of the building is in really good condition, it is housing, which means we need kitchens, we need laundry rooms and stuff. This was a hotel, so we didn't offer any of that. So there's going to be some alterations that need to happen. And again, partial occupancy, lucky if it's 20% March, and then not full occupancy until summer, depending on contractors. I think we just have to realize that means that 96 plus 100, which is that other building next door, is not likely to happen well in the summer. And what do we do in the interim as we're demoting some of these other spots? So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. All right, seeing no other discussion, thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and move on to our last item for today. So the rest of the items under new business will be dealt with at the special committee meeting next Wednesday, January 25th. And actually, before I get to this item, I want to do just a quick time check. How many members of the public wanted to speak today during final audience participation? Okay. So then we'll go ahead and go on, and then I will ask for a motion to extend here soon. So last item is implementation of ERA 2 funds through AHFC. So in December, we approved ERA 2 funds to be administered by AHFC, and specifically delineated that parts of the funds within federal guidelines would go towards assisting with emergency shelter and some of the new housing units that have come online. So can the administration please speak to the deployment of these funds and any issues that you're having?
Through the chair, Mr. Rivera, ERA 2 funds have been moved from the municipality over to AHFC. We met with them last week to finalize the contract, and I think they're well on the way for deployment.
And thank you. So in your discussions on finalizing the contract, are the funds going to be reused as we envisioned them, both for the emergency shelter needs as well as assisting with rents for some of the new housing units that have come online, like the guest house?
Through the chair, Mr. Rivera, yes. So it is the $8.075 million is going to be used for up to 18 months of rental assistance. So.
Okay, and has that contract been signed yet?
Through the chair, that's not my department, but I can check with the CFO and see if that has been.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this topic? And I think part of the reason why this topic was brought up is that, as was alluded to in December, some of these funds were going to helping some of the new housing units that have come online, like the guest house. I think without these funds, those providers are going to have to make some difficult decisions, including possible evictions, and so that could add possibly even more like I said earlier, sort of we're dealing with human beings, that possibly could add even more to the issues that we're already dealing with. But glad to see that some of these issues have likely been resolved. Mr. Franks, I think you had a question.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I feel like you read my mind because I don't remember putting myself on the queue, but I do have a question. It's not specific to this item, but just before we move on to new business, may I go ahead and ask it?
Sure.
I was wondering if we could get an update on the status of the Salvation Army Recovery Center. As it was part of the facilitated plan, I realize it's not related to this topic here, but again, before we move on to new business.
Yeah, thanks. So I think what I will do is I will add that as a new business item, because I don't think that topic is something that we have necessarily discussed under unfinished business. So
Okay.
we will add that to the agenda for the January 25th meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And can you just repeat what you're looking for specifically?
If we could get a status update on the Salvation Army Recovery Center, since it was part of the discussion during the facilitating process.
Okay, so I'm happy to include that. I think this, you're talking about the treatment facility?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I think I myself as the chair of this committee have been trying to really have a strict delineation between housing and homelessness and treatment. And generally, I think the Health Policy Committee has really wanted to spearhead discussions on treatment. But I will go ahead. When is the next
That makes sense.
HPC meeting?
I saw Mr. Rowland nod his head, so
Yeah, we can add that to our agenda.
cool.
Email me so I don't forget.
I'll do that now.
Thank you. Thanks. And I guess just to add, part of the reason why I want that delineation is that I don't want people to think that substance misuse issues are a homelessness problem, because they're not. It's a broader community problem. Thanks. Okay, so any other discussion on Area 2 funds before I ask for a motion to extend? Okay, so appreciate all of the updates, Ms. Johnson. So I'll go ahead and ask for a motion to extend by 5 minutes.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any opposition to the motion? Okay, seeing none, then we are extended to 12:35. Like I said earlier, all of our new business items that you see on the agenda will be discussed at the January 25th committee meeting. And what I'm going to try to do next month during the the subcommittee meeting that's going to focus entirely on emergency social plan implementation and demobilization, is really start with looking at the numbers that we have and help the public and the body get a good, clear picture of the issues that we have before us, so that we can really start honing in on some of the solutions. So that'll be something that we start discussing next month. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna move on to committee legislative and budget priorities. I don't have anything there. Is there any discussion on that? Go ahead, Mr. Cross.
Yeah, and I don't know where this fits in, so this is an ambiguous, but the future of our homeless is children in a traumatized setting. And so, our maintenance department communicates with DOT, but for whatever reason, I have yet to see OCS with presentations at our homeless meetings or our health and services. I would anticipate that should be a regular part, that we're getting information from OCS regarding the children, because we get fantastic updates from Covenant House. But, if we're not adequately investing and providing services to these children in a trauma situation, the invisible population of our homeless, that you got to realize this problem is just going to continue to grow. If you look at the state statistics on the website, the numbers of children in OCS are growing. They're growing more every month. Meanwhile, the number of houses that are diminishing. That diminished heavily through COVID, right? Because of the complications. So, I watch those statistics. I watch them every month when they come out. They update it on the state website. Those numbers are increasing. And if we don't recognize that that's the seeds of future homelessness, we're going to be dealing with this on a much larger scale than we ever anticipated. So I would really like to see this committee, as well as the health committees, really focus on and communicating with OCS on what we can be doing to help children in trauma, because they are, if you just go down to Sullivan Arena and you ask them to do stories, 99.9% of those individuals that are in these problems came from a traumatized childhood, ended up in a foster system, ended up not finding homes, not finding what they needed, and then they have a complete diminished value of self-worth, and they self-medicate through substances. So I would really love to see more of our conversations focus on, and a larger percentage of it focus on the small children who are invisible in the system. So can we start getting some updates from OCS and other services that contribute to this, and what are we doing to help them? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Happy to talk to you further about that offline. All right, I don't see anyone else for committee legislative and budget priorities. Then I'll go ahead.
I just have a little update. Well, maybe this is something for later, but I wanted to talk about ACH's recent housing summit that they do. Is this an opportune time to do that? Okay. So, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll need to extend it, but that's fine.
I'll make it quick. They had over 100 participants and for the 2-day summit, and I guess I got a lot of positive response, and they had some very dynamic conversations, and they hope to do more of them, and so I thank them for their good work. My understanding is that they're going to be doing one specifically around policy, so I look forward to what comes next.
Great, thank you. So with that, I will ask for a motion to extend by another 2 minutes. I think that should get us there.
So moved.
Thanks. Any opposition? Okay, so seeing none, we're extended to 3:57, or excuse me, 12:37. All right, so with that, we'll move on to final audience participation. Welcome.
Hello, James Thornton, Fairview Community Council. Through the chair, thank you all for your service. Thank you for everyone in the audience who's working towards these issues. I really appreciate all the conversation about the impacts on the neighborhood today and everything you guys have done to get us help. I drove by today and saw a bunch of APD in the parking lot, and just as usual, I thought, what's going on? Well, what's going on is we're seeing some appropriations being put to use. So thank you very much. We're going to be tracking this as a neighborhood. As many of the neighbors live this every day. Thank you so much. I just want to urge everyone that's part of these processes in the background to please do everything you can to speed up the process. I've been a part of the building a business in this town, and it's really challenging and things really push out. So every little thing you can do, whatever your influence is, to get these numbers safely housed before summer hits would be really appreciated by everyone. And no small push is every little bit helps. So thank you very much. And I just have to say again about certain individuals that this body may not be necessarily in charge of focusing on. We have real problems in our neighborhood. We have individuals causing problems to businesses, it may be drug related, it may be mental health related, it may just be that they are just troublesome individuals, which is how our community is trying to speak on certain individuals. We're trying to just use one term, troublesome individuals. I know that it may not be this body's, it may not be your job to find out to find a way to help these folks, but we need more mental health services. I'd like to hear about the beds over there at the Old Alaska Club, because substance abuse is a big deal, and I had APD at my business. There's an individual, we'll call her Jane. She assaulted the owner of the Mongolian barbecue. I walked in to have lunch with my friend and ended up pulling the person out because I had dealt with her in my business. And she never had APD show up on that assault. She still has the bag of tools that Scotty said, hold this, because this was the weapon that she hit you with. And she wasn't necessarily super violent, but at that time, the owner of Mongolian Barbecue was very scared. I've helped her subsequently with my police, my security guard. APD is doing the best they can, but when this individual came into my business recently, they couldn't do anything. And they said, we can't arrest her unless she gets in the way of traffic or does something. So anyways, just a small story. We need additional services for folks beyond just housing those that need that final step. So thank you for all working together. Really appreciate it. And thank you so much for getting appropriations on the street.
Thank you. All right, with that takes us to the end of our time. Thanks everyone for the committee meeting today. We're adjourned.
Thank you.